Welcome to another episode of The Evaluation Couch, the podcast where we talk about career growth and the field of evaluation. This is your host, Maria Montenegro. If you are an evaluator, regardless of where you are in your career, you probably have asked yourself and wondered whether becoming an independent consultant was the right path for you. And one of the main reasons that I've heard that held people back in making this decision, even when they know this is what is right for their career, is losing the stability and the risk of potentially not earning the income that they need to meet their needs. When my guests shared with me about their sales pipeline and how it helps them make sure that their consulting business helps them meet their financial needs and goals, I knew that I had to bring them to my podcast. So I'm very grateful for Paul Bakker for being here today. And Paul, can you please start by introducing yourself?
Paul Bakker, a credentialed evaluator through the Canadian Evaluation Society and on the Canadian Evaluation Society's board as the Ontario chapter rep. I'm currently transitioning into the engagement and membership role. And for my professional practice, I'm an external evaluation consultant with a passion for poverty reduction work. Do work in many different sectors, but a good passion for reducing poverty, in which takes a really holistic approach. That's why I'm a fan of sustainable livelihoods, focusing my practice on equitable evaluation capacity building in organizations and the complexity that it takes to reduce poverty and help people achieve sustainable livelihoods also necessitates taking a developmental approach, a principles-focused approach, and then proving that this has value and getting funding requires some rigorous impact measurement.
Thank you for sharing. Paul, I'm wondering if you could share the role you've played in the Evaluation Café, because that has been an initiative that's also near to your heart, that has been, I think, a great asset to the evaluation community in Canada. And I'm just curious to hear a little bit more about how you got involved in that and what it's looked like over the years.
Yeah, so how I got involved was a colleague back early in my evaluation career, a different firm was like wanting to start this up, Alison Gouvier. Give credit to her for it was her initial initiative. Myself and a few others joined, but I've maintained it. It's been over 10 years. It started as Valuation Café Toronto. It started with the thought of there's many evaluators that are the sole evaluator in their organization. They don't necessarily have the evaluation colleagues to talk shop with. So let's start an event where we can get together and talk shop. It's about networking and peer learning. We were able to build a group of regulars enough to it got to this point where let's say, hey, what do you want to talk about? What do you want to share? What are you struggling with? And someone comes forward and we're able to talk, do, share as the community wants and needs. I've been organizing that for quite a long time, and thankfully there was some benefits to COVID, which we had to go online, and we started seeing our colleagues beyond the GTA. That was nice. So we've now become Evaluation Café Ontario. We do have sponsorship from the Ontario chapter. And with that sponsorship, and they represent Ontario. So now we're able to serve and connect with colleagues across the province. And if any of your listeners from anywhere wants to join, we don't really say no. You're welcome to hop on the online portions.
Thank you for sharing, Paul. I know I've participated in some, and I was very excited when COVID happened and there was this ability to join online, and it's such a great initiative. So thank you so much, Paul. And I ask you to come here today because I've actually been lucky to collaborate with you in consulting projects. And so I feel like I have an insider and awareness of how you approach consulting, what you do, but also because you shared with me a very interesting piece around how you have a sales pipeline for your consulting business. So to get us started, can you share what your consulting practice looks like and how it got started?
Yeah, my consulting practice, Social Impact Squared, is a sole proprietorship. I'm starting to move towards partnering with another organization, but for the longest time, I operated as a sole proprietor. we'll touch on this throughout the conversation then. What does my practice look like? And use that sole proprietor. We often use the term independent consultant, which they're misnomers because you can't do it alone. As you mentioned, Maria, we work together. I have a network of subcontractors, and sometimes I have a network, as I said, the other teams, other colleagues that I will subcontract. They will subcontract myself. So I'm not doing the work by myself. I do have colleagues that I work with. It's just not employees. We mentioned the kinds of work that I'm passionate about. That the other thing is, there's a focus on the nonprofit sector for myself more than government work. How I got started was in a consulting firm. And when they would review RFPs, there would be some small ones. And they were like, oh, that's too small. That's for an independent consultant. And I was like, independent consultant. Always been a little bit independent of an individual. If I could have a handful of these, I know they're small, but if I could have a handful of these, I could have similar income. So I was like, that's interesting. I was a member of AEA and attended their independent consulting TIG talks, workshops, seen their resources. More recently, there's a Canadian version one suggests as well. So started to learn more about what this looks like. What does it take? But then eventually, like I was earlier than I thought you would need to be to start doing independent consulting. But I was working at a firm earlier, and then I was in a situation where I needed to look for new opportunities. I was considering employment, but I started considering in consulting contracts and leaving myself open for those. One came in the door and I secured another through my network. Well, I put out the open for business shingle and secured another through my network of people that I knew. And then colleagues in other firms hired me to do some help, and one thing led to another after a number of months. And then I was able to, meet that income level that I was doing as an employee, and within a year surpass it. So that was definitely turbulent, forced into it early, even though I was planning on it, but it ended up working out.
Paul, I'm curious, you mentioned it was earlier in your career than others do it. And something I've seen with my clients is that oftentimes people are interested in independent consulting, but they're scared. They think they need at least 10 years of experience to actually be like qualified for contracts. What would you have to say around that? How many years of experience did you have, and how did you find having that experience playing a role in being able to reach this amazing milestone of within a year overpass your employee income?
One of my advantages was my rate was low compared to other consultants. I had to work hard to get it going, and I've been pushing that rate up since. That was a competitive advantage at the time. The landscape was a bit different, but I've seen people like how early, but it's the model, right? Are you the expert on things? No, you're not the seasoned expert on things, but is there some nonprofits that can't afford the expert, right? And you can get your foot in the door, and like maybe you find your particular expertise, even though there's sometimes with youth that now it's like AI's come up, right? Like you have 20 years experience, it doesn't matter, right? Well, AI wasn't around 20 years ago. So you can get niche experience even in a short time in your career in something innovative that the people that have been around forever don't have. And as well, that working with the colleagues, there's a lot of smaller firms. There's a lot of other organizations that need temporary help. They don't need the person to lead the project. They need a team member that can play a role, and they need them part-time. They don't need it. They're not looking to hire an employee full-time. So putting out your open for business side to those organizations, like, it is always a challenge. When you have a junior or someone that's good for junior work, they don't stay junior forever. Eventually they grow and they're like, I can't pay you what you deserve. I need a role where you're doing certain work that's at a lower rate. So you can start your independent consultant career by just it working for a number of others at that, not the top rate, but you can make a living off it for sure.
Thank you. I think many people will feel seen with that discussion and the different ways in which you can set up your consulting practice to make it work, regardless of how many years of experience you have. So that's been a good overview of how you got there, why you started. What does your consulting business look like today versus when it started?
The project sizes have become larger, and that's where I was heading. That's where I'm like talking about like looking at colleagues, the logical outcomes, joining, working with them more and more as a consistent team, because I got to the point where I'm like, I'm growing larger and larger, and I want to do work at that like systems level. It's hard to do that without that consistent team. But yeah, certainly the sizes of projects, the level of which I'm working, like for instance, the Creditville Community Wellness Hub is a collective impact of over a dozen organizations. So yeah, those are the levels of projects that I'm really excited about and want to do more.
Nice. So now you're collaborating more with another consulting company to do these larger projects.
Larger projects, and then expanding the potential offerings and skill sets, working at that, say, collective impact level, coordinating across sectors. If it's like poverty reduction organizations that are doing similar work, how can we not recreate the wheel on measurement? How we can create some kind of shared measurement or learning and aligning what we do. There's a lot of great data management systems, common systems, which Elo has good experience doing. Logical outcomes with Elo, and they're also a leader in AI for the nonprofit space. So that's offering me team members in general. There's larger projects you need more team members, but larger skill sets that are needed to do that systems level work.
And we'll include in the episode notes the artificial intelligence tool for evaluation planning that Logical Outcomes has made available for nonprofit organizations. I think that's a very cool thing that they've done, making these available for organizations that don't have the resources to build these tools in-house.
They have a whole AI workspace for nonprofits now. I used it for a proposal. And I was like, make my proposal, tidy it up and make it concise. And it was how much more concise it did. I was annoyed at it. Your robot, you shouldn't be that much better than me, but it was very good at it. It has a suite of useful tools now.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. One thing that stands in the way of people pursuing a consulting career, even when they know that ultimately this is where they want to go, is that fear of missing the stability of being employed by someone else. What has your experience with stability been like throughout your journey as a consultant?
I don't want to start with being like, yeah, the gig economy is great. Without its faults, it does have its faults. I do think within the evaluation sector, there is a time and place and value for the external evaluator. I think in our industry, there is a good role for externals. I've been good about minimizing stress, about having the income to keep a roof over my head. One of the things we're going to be talking about is the concept of the sales pipeline. At the very beginning, when it was like, oops, I don't have a job, I need a job, that was stressful. I did have at least one panic attack, but within the year, I built up a pipeline that was getting me the income that I was getting when I was an employee. And I've been pretty good with maintaining that, and it gives you the outlook of this is probably the income you have coming in, knowing what I do to maintain that. And there's definitely been periods where I'd maintained it to the point where I'd look at it and think, I should probably do something else to get another project. And then the next day, someone would email me like, hey, could you help us out? We could use an evaluator. That was nice when that happens. There's been definitely other times where I've had to then like put the work in. But so I feel like I have stability from that and I have control over that. And in some ways, when I reflect on our economy day, with tariffs and U.S. politics, the shifts, priorities in politics, jobs, like even if you're an employee, are still there's some precarity in them. If you're in the nonprofit sector, a lot of that work's grant funded. If those grants go away, your job might go away. Government has job security, but it might not be. It might be like this department is now shrinking. We're not going to fire you, but you might be doing a different job. If you care about having a job rather than the job you really want. I do hear some my federal colleagues be like, and one was like, "Oh, do you struggle doing the work the way you want to do it?" And it was like, "No, not at all. I'm my own boss." Where they don't have that opportunity. Otherwise, your job might go away, and then you have, you're like, "Oh, do I have no income?" Maybe employment insurance, where my income might fluctuate year to year. I'm in control of it, but it's very unlikely that I'll have no projects next year, for instance. So I'm worried about making a little less. I'm not stressed about having no work.
Right. And I think important when people think about stability, I feel like most people are only considering that like constant paycheck that doesn't fluctuate. But like being an employee, being in a corporation does come with risks. There's risks of layoffs, even in the public sector in the US, Canada, many countries right now, risks of burnout, changing your position, changing the organization, all of that plays a role in our stability. So I appreciate you highlighting that.
A colleague, I just got news that their position's been eliminated. I respect this person and they're respected in the evaluation community. They're really good at their job. They're a really great evaluator, and it didn't give them security because the systems and the organization it's nothing that they had control over. But now they have to search for a new job.
Yeah. And I think it's happening to so many people right now in evaluation that that's just the reality. So thank you for bringing that up. And that sales pipeline that you brought up has played a role in what you've described, right? In making sure that your income meets your needs, even if it fluctuates, in keeping that control over what your numbers look like. So can you introduce us to what this sales pipeline is? How did you integrate it into your business? I don't know if you remember, if it was intentional, if you learned about it somewhere, or if it just evolved as you started your practice. But I would love to learn a bit more about it before we go into the details of what it looks like.
It was a concept I picked up from a colleague very early on in those initial days of starting to work independently. And it is essentially the pipeline. Often you might hear like a sales funnel where you have different levels of leads that, okay, I got this organization. I got someone within this organization to sign up to my newsletter. It doesn't mean that you're getting work from them, but you've built some connection. Maybe down the road, maybe at some point, one of these people does that, emails out and says, "Hey, I want to work with you." But the chances of each one of that happening is low. But if you have enough of them, then you can probably estimate that if they're each at 3% chance of reaching out, then you get enough of them, and you're going to get another contract before the end of the year. So you want a lot of those when they're unlikely, but then you can do more things, build more relations, do things where there's organizations that's done this sometimes where we're applying for a grant and there's an evaluation component, and I will help you with evaluation planning and writing the grant application with the understanding that if the grant's successful, I get to be the person that does the evaluation part and get the funding for that. And then it's like, okay, well, what's the grant success rate at? Is it 20? Is it 50%? And that's more likely. You can track these, and you need less of those. So you can track your leads, the likelihood, how much each of those, the different opportunities might be. Is it a small contract, large contract? When would that money come in? And it then gives you projections on what your income is likely trending to be in the coming year or two.
And how has this sales pipeline helped your consulting business?
It helps. It's helped me maintain income stability. I have a goal in mind. I like good target setting. You got your minimum goal and your stretch goal. What I need to pay my bills and what I would like to make, get a little nice vacation or treat and whatnot, and to be able to not pay super close attention to the books. That goal definitely motivates when I start the year. I need to build that pipeline more, and helps me with the kinds of things I need to do. It's good to have that mix of types of leads. You can get sole source opportunities, and what do you need to do to get those, and your business strategy, There's RFPs we mentioned. Those are the ones that are less likely. You could have a success rate of 10% or 20% on writing your RFPs, but they take a good amount of time and you only win 1 out of 5, 1 out of 4 if you're really good kind of thing. Where if you can get sole source, when you get a lead and it's a sole source lead, it's like there's a really high chance the contract's going to get signed.
Can you tell me more about the sole source? How do you start that relationship? Is it something that develops when you offer to write the evaluation piece of a grant, or is it in a networking environment where you create that connection? What has worked for you? I'm curious because most people considering consulting just think of the RFPs, their source of contracts. One thing I learned from you about the sales pipeline is the probability is really low. You need to develop your skills on other sources to be successful.
If you care, I'm like in the consultant business, you have how much time you're spending and your win rate. Can you increase the win rate? That's good because you want to spend more time on billable work than unbillable work, which applying to RFPs is there. You're not vast majority of the times you're not getting paid to do that. I tend not to like to do a whole bunch of work and then it amounts to nothing. I can minimize that. I do and sometimes the RFP process, I've been finding it's getting shorter and shorter. It's like, you have to, they're like, we're assuming you're going to use AI because I've been finding them more and more frequently. They're like, you have a week or two to reply to this RFP. You need a quick turnaround time when you're busy. As a consultant, you're trying to maximize billable hours and what you need to do. You're trying to work your full-time hours. And then this RFP comes up and sometimes you're good. You can set time. Oh, I know I'm going to need to write RFPs, but sometimes it comes up and you're like, oh, I got to work overtime, which is less pleasant than the strategy of building relationships with people, having lunches, having coffee chats, seeing them at conferences. And that was one where I mentioned early on that I attended a workshop and the one gentleman is, I like you. Not about your knowledge, your skill set, your CV. That's what it's about on an RFP. I've had good conversations with you and we've come to like each other as people. And therefore I want to work with you. That plays into those. So, and sometimes you can show your value. You do a little work with someone, you help them out in some way before you doing any paid work for them. You get to learn your skill sets, that you're there to help, so on and so forth. Giving the $2 ahead of time to improve your survey response rate. It's just a little something, but it creates that reciprocal, oh, you gave me something. Now I feel like I need to give you something in return. Work comes the way and I can give it out sole source. I want to give it to you. So there is a whole marketplace. A lot of work doesn't hit RFPs, but large ones tend to have to go RFP.
Yeah, so interesting. So many takeaways from that, right? Like first, the needing to network with people that hire evaluators, not only with evaluators, although evaluators can sometimes hire evaluators, but with organizations that potentially hire evaluators. Within that, you need them to know that you are open for opportunities and building that reciprocal relationship. I really like that. How do you think adopting a sales pipeline can help mitigate the risks of jumping from employee to consultant?
You can start some of these things like earlier if you're employee. I don't know, do what Maria's doing. Create a podcast, getting your name out there, more people, do those networking with those organizations so that when you're ready and you put open for business sign out to them, that you have, you're like, okay, I can list 100 people that, and how deep of a relationship, you can start putting those estimates like, well, there's a 3%, 5% chance. And some of these people have developed a close relationship. I think they'd want to work with me. You can start planning looking for RFPs, putting some notifications on some keywords for RFPs out there. Seeing how many come up that you're like, I could maybe bid on this and have a chance of winning. See how many you'd be like, if I was on my own trying to do this, or if I could pull a team together within a time period, you can start putting something together that you're like, okay, with all these different leads with the different percentages, am I getting close to what I need? for income before you make the jump. You can start doing that.
Yeah, I like that idea. It's similar to like when you're applying even for any job. If you start building relationships, if you start before there's a job posting, then it's more likely that you'll be successful. So it's a similar thing, like starting to build your network, your relationships, so that it increases the likelihood of being successful once you make that jump and people know you're open for business.
Yeah. My first contract was just that. I was volunteering. Social Venture Partners Toronto. The concept is they put in donations into the shared pool, but I also learned it was like $5,000. I'm like, I don't have $5,000 to give you. I have, but they also donate their expertise. So they give the grants to an organization, but then they do consulting with that organization whenever they need. So I'm like, I don't have $5,000. I have evaluation expertise if you ever need it. They're like, okay, we like to try to keep it with the partners that are able to pool, but then they're like, they don't have evaluation expertise. We will accept your evaluation expertise. So that network of, people that were far enough in their careers that they had $5,000 to give to a charity, they got to know me, they got to know my work. And when I was like, oh, I'm open for consulting, that was one of my original sources of first contracts.
Amazing. There's definitely things people can start doing, even if they're not ready to make that full jump, that will help them later on. I love that. So, Paul, you've mentioned some of the leads within your sales pipeline, but have you covered all of them? Can you go over them again? What would be super interesting is hearing kind of a range from what you've seen works for you. I know that it'll be different for different people, but just to give people an idea of what the success ratio is for the different types of leads.
Yeah. So there's open source, which is RFPs. This is anyone could apply to this opportunity, like a job posting with a request for proposal. If people aren't familiar with RFP, sometimes they're expressions of interests and things like that. So those, some people are better than others and you can be more selective. I tend to try to only do the investment and work in RFPs if I feel like I'm a good fit. I do have a higher success rate, but I don't think 25% is too typical. Some firms out there that have juniors and there's pumping out RFP after RFP, and it might be a long shot. This is our business model. We do it a lot, and and now with AI, we don't have to spend as much time. So we're putting out a ton of RFPs, but might only hit on, 10% or something, lower chance of getting those. The benefit is they're RFPs, so they're probably larger multi-year projects. The drawback is if success is low and it's time intensive, you're spending a lot of billable time without getting paid. And then there's vendors of record, multi-source. Sometimes funders need a few quotes. And then it's okay, I'm one of three. You're like, I'm confident, but I'm sure the other three are confident. And maybe you should only expect you have a 33% chance of, if you're one of two, it's a 50% chance of getting it.
In some organizations, especially public sector, there's a pre-verified list of vendors that get access to these type of contracts because there's a shorter turnaround time. Is that something you have observed as well?
Yeah, doesn't have to be the vendor of record model. You want to be on the vendors of record so that, different organizations might do a bit differently, but they might send the opportunity to a small handful of agencies on the vendor record. So it's not completely open, but you're only competing against a small number. Or it's possible they might be like, we reviewed the record and we think you can do this. And then that vendor record turns into a sole source, but often the vendor record they go to a few and ask quotes. And so you want those. So, you have a much better chance if you're responding, you have a much better chance of that it's going to come to fruition.
It's important to make sure you're included within lists that will give you these opportunities.
They're not easy to get onto, but you want to get on the lists for sure.
Amazing. What's the next lead?
And the next one we've talked a lot about is sole source, right? And those ones you're like, okay, I'm the only one they're asking. So it's a much higher chance. You can be like 75, depending on how far it gets down the line. 99. It doesn't get to 100 until there's a signed contract.
I imagine these leads require a lot more work, like time to develop relationships. Maybe it's even years. Has that been your experience?
Sometimes years. Sometimes years. Like work. Though, what do you want to call work, right? So there's some colleagues that it's like I make sure to have a coffee chat, have a lunch meeting, a dinner meeting at least once a year and maintain that connection. Work, or is it like having a enjoyable conversation with a colleague I like? It is time I got to spend doing it. I got to invest that time and be purposeful. I need to maintain that connection. I can't let that connection just fizzle out. But I like talking to my colleagues. I like these people. So it's enjoyable work.
Love that. Yeah. Okay. That's all the leads, right?
Those are the three main buckets of leads. The main ones affect the likelihoods of a low or higher chance.
Can you walk me through an example of how one might use this sales pipeline in making decisions in your business?
Oh, there might be times where you're halfway through the year and you're like, I would like to make more income still. And it's halfway through the year. Those don't know if there's an RFP that's going to come my way that I'll be a great fit. And getting on the vendor list, then getting a project, and then signing the contract, and then the work starts, and then I get paid. That's not going to happen by the end of the year. But there is other strategies, as we mentioned. Hi, colleagues. I got time. You need help? I'm here for you. And that could produce work right quick and then help you make that income goal by the end of the year. But you'd also want to be looking, I got income from now, but do I have income long term? So, I definitely need that mix and trying to get those longer term projects. So it can help guide you. You need to do business development. And sometimes it is that trigger. I'll be looking at it and knowing I need to do more to get business in the door. And then where do I want to put my efforts? Do I need to put it more in those shorter term? Do I need to put it more in sole source? Like I said, I had a good stretch for quite a while where there was a time where I'm like, man, I've done really good. I should get a new project. And then an email, a phone call happens and they're like, yeah, we want you to do work. Great. But that doesn't happen without doing the work to build that network. So if that's slowing down, then you need to book more lunch meetings and follow up and do that networking to build those relationships with the right people. So yeah, I think you can look at it, your mix of leads, what it's predicting for your income and what you got to do to get there.
It's about diversifying your sources and being intentional and thinking about where do I spend my time now to make sure that I reach the outcome that I want, given the likelihood of this being successful.
Yeah, that and aligned with your business goals and strategy, right? The sole source served me really well for quite a while. Really happy doing this project, but they were smaller. And I'm realizing I need to build and change the mix a bit because I want to do the larger multi-year projects. So I needed to change my lead strategy in accordance to that.
Right. That's one thing I appreciate you sharing how your practice has changed. It highlights that it doesn't have to be static. I think many people, when they're thinking about jumping into consulting, they're like, but I don't want to apply for these large RFPs. I don't think I can compete. What I'm getting out of this conversation is it doesn't have to look like that. It can be a component of, and you can change that as your business matures and your priorities change and your preference changes as well.
Yeah. Like one way to start, and again, is that going to your colleagues and being a subcontractor for other firms. That can be how you start. Doesn't mean you're stuck there, but that gets you started. You can get your own one project that's your project. And then you can get your two projects until you got a suite of your own projects. And then maybe you're subcontracting others. You don't have to jump into being the absolute expert. That's one path in.
Thank you so much, Paula. Do you have any tips for people considering starting their journey in consulting?
Covered a lot already. Build that network. You still need colleagues to network. The community of interest, the independent consulting community of interest from Canadian Evaluation Society is all going to have great resources And while I never bought the book, I did engage in both of those, and pretty much every session, every presentation of those groups, pretty much all reference Gail Barrington's book on starting your own consulting practice.
I'll just add and wrap up the episode with sharing that I actually recently realized and found out that the AEA topical interest group on independent consulting actually has most of their sessions recorded and available on YouTube. If you haven't been attending for a while, you can actually access tons of their sessions that are recorded online, and I'll add the link in the episode notes.
Those resources were really valuable, and I would say they made a significant impact on me being successful for sure.
Love that. Thank you, Paul, for being here and for sharing. And I hope to see you soon in an evaluation conference.
For sure.
If you found this episode helpful, make sure you follow the Evaluation Couch on Apple and Spotify podcasts. I'm here to help you build the evaluation career that you deserve. Make sure you follow me on LinkedIn, where I share career tips and resources. And if you're ready to become a confident evaluator that attracts top evaluation opportunities, download my free workbook, which you can find in the episode notes.